Critics of Joseph Smith have long claimed that the stories of the Restoration offered by him were revised over a period of time until they became what is known today as the accepted history of the Church. In my lecture this morning, I would like to examine some aspects of this claim of revisionism from a documentary perspective. I will start by talking about the story of the coming forth of the Book of Mormon, and then move into a discussion of the first vision. I have a very definite reason for addressing these topics in reverse historical order, and this will become apparent as my lecture progresses. Please be aware that in my remarks today, I will be utilizing several abbreviations such as JS 1832, which refers to Joseph Smith's 1832 history, and JS 1838, which refers to the manuscript that was published in 1842 and became the official history of the Church. I will be presenting and summarizing a considerable amount of new research on both the story of the coming forth of the Book of Mormon and that of the first vision, but not nearly all that I have available at this time. And it is my hope that you will find something in this material that will be useful in defending the prophet's foundational stories from the critics of the Church. If a person wants to determine whether or not a story has changed over time, it is logical to first examine that story in its earliest known form. In the case of the Book of Mormon account, we are fortunate to have records from several eyewitnesses who heard Joseph Smith relate this story for the first time. These witnesses are his mother, Lucy Mack Smith, his sister, Catherine Smith, and his brother, William Smith. These three eyewitnesses agree that Joseph's story was first told to them during the fall harvest season shortly before Alvin Smith died, thereby giving us a date of 1823. And they are in agreement that the story told to them was that an angel had appeared to Joseph and told him about a golden engraved record hidden in a nearby hill. Joseph talked to his whole family about this revelation for a considerable length of time. He stated that he was required to wait for a period of 4 years before he was allowed to retrieve the record, and he warned his family members that they must not tell others in the community about this ancient artifact. None of these three eyewitnesses ever mentions that they heard any different story of origin related by Joseph Smith, and none of them ever mentions hearing, even in the community, any earlier version of this story. It is interesting to note that one of the Smith's neighbors, named Lorenzo Saunders, stated that before Alvin Smith died in November of 1823, Joseph Smith Jr. told the Saunders family that he had seen an angel and was notified about the plates. Joseph Smith evidently broke his own rule of non-disclosure in this instance, but in the process provided an independent set of witnesses to the elements of his story in 1823. A possible second-hand verification of this circumstance comes from Harrison Chamberlain. He claimed to have heard from people living in the vicinity of Palmyra in the late fall of 1823, Joseph Smith told his most intimate associates about his vision of an angel and the engraved golden plates buried in a hill, which contained revelation from God. We know that Joseph's story about the Book of Mormon remained the same through the year 1826 because during that period, he worked in southern New York State for the Knight family, and while he was in their employ, he said that a personage had appeared to him in a vision and told him where there was an ancient gold book buried. Martin Harris is our next eyewitness for the content of Joseph Smith's story. He said that the first time he heard about the Gold Bible was around the 1st of October in the year 1827. Harris recalled that the day following this, he went into Palmyra and spoke to some of the residents of the village about this matter. They repeated the account of it as given to them by Joseph Smith Sr., and it matched with what Joseph Jr. had said earlier. Lucy Mack Smith arrived a little bit later at the house of Martin Harris and told him about Joseph bringing the plates to the Smith residence and many other things. She further informed Martin that Joseph wished to see him. Martin sent his wife and daughter home with Lucy Mack Smith at this time, and when they returned, they told Martin that they had both been allowed to lift a very heavy object that was said to be the golden plates. When Martin Harris went himself to the Smith home in Manchester, New York, Joseph Jr. was away. And Martin reports, this gave me an opportunity of talking with his wife and family about the plates. Martin indicates that he desired to get at the truth of the matter. I talked with them separately, he said, to see if their stories agreed, and I found they did agree. When Joseph came home, I did not wish him to know that I had been speaking with them, so I took him by the arm and led him away from the rest, and requested him to tell me the story. which he did as follows. He said an angel had appeared to him and told him it was God's work. Joseph talked about the spectacles and said that they had the ability to display a lifelike visual image. He also said the angel told him that the plates must be translated, printed, and sent before the world. Martin relates, while at Mr. Smith's, I hefted the plates and knew from the heft that they were lead or gold, and I knew that Joseph had not credit enough to buy so much lead. We may conclude from all of this documentary evidence that between the initial disclosure of the origin of the Book of Mormon in the fall of 1823 and Joseph bringing the plates into the Smith residence in the fall of 1827, his story did not change. He consistently told individuals that an angel of God had informed him about a set of golden plates. Then the historical scene changes dramatically. It is known from documentary sources that in the year 1827, Joseph Smith started making his story known among the general populace. I have collected several statements by critics, actually there's 11, of Joseph Smith who say that they heard the story during this year from either Joseph Smith or one of his close associates. There were, of course, some people who were skeptical about the young man's claims of new revelation from the Almighty. This is the time period where the public started to speculate heavily about what they thought was really behind Joseph Smith's story and how they imagined the book idea really originated. By the summer of 1829, when the Book of Mormon was being prepared for the press, the line between history and mythology had been blurring for some time. An issue of the June 1829 Wayne Sentinel newspaper in Palmyra made note of the fact that there had already been much speculation about the Golden Bible floating around the region. Stephen S. Harding provides us with a unique and insightful snapshot of what was going on during this precise time period. He visited the Grandin print shop where the book was being published, and there he met Father Smith, the prophet, Oliver Cowdery, and Martin Harris in the morning. Then in the afternoon, he had a lengthy conversation with his cousin Pomeroy Tucker and Mr. Grandin, where he heard some new things about the book that was being produced. The things that he heard from these two different groups of men is very instructive. Martin Harris informed Harding that the plates of the book were found in a hill, an angel of the Lord was involved, and the devil was working to thwart the project. Pomeroy Tucker, on the other hand, told him something quite different. He wanted Harding to believe that Joseph Smith had a connection with the black art, animal sacrifice, and money digging. Though in later years, Tucker admitted that these stories only qualified as rumors. When Mr. Grandin was interviewed about the Book of Mormon just 2 years later than his meeting with Harding, he also seemed to be of the opinion that the golden plates were connected with money-digging lore. John H. Gilbert, whose picture you see here on the screen, was also a workman in the Grandin print shop during the production of the Book of Mormon. He likewise held to the belief that Joseph Smith was a money digger who was involved in magic practices. From this documentary evidence, it can be concluded that two different stories of origin were being promulgated in the Grandin building at the same time that the Book of Mormon was being issued from it. The workmen of the Grandin print shop typeset and proofread the preface page of the Book of Mormon, and so they knew without any ambiguity what the authentic story of its origin was, and they were also aware from this document that there were, quote, many false reports circulating about the book. Yet they chose to champion the rumors that were swirling around the region. Their repetition of idle reports, therefore, represents a deliberate revision of Joseph Smith's own story. On this next slide, I have highlighted the date August 1829 so that you can see how the information that I just presented correlates with what I will talk about next. It is at the very same time that Stephen Harding was hearing an alternative storyline in Palmyra that some Latter-day Saints tried to set the record straight. The report of story elements printed in the 11th of August 1829 issue of the Palmyra Freeman is not perfect, but it is very close to being correct in its elements. After filtering out a little of the biased opinion and incorrect notations, it says this: Joseph Smith of Manchester, New York, said he was visited 3 times by a messenger of the Almighty. Joseph was informed that a golden Bible was deposited in a hill in Manchester. It was an ancient record of divine nature and origin. Joseph went to the place of deposit, dug into the earth a little ways, and found the golden Bible along with a huge pair of spectacles. Joseph was instructed not to let any person see the objects on penalty of death. The plates of gold measured 8 inches long and 6 inches wide and were 1/8 of an inch thick. The plates were engraved with hieroglyphics, and the spectacles enabled Joseph to interpret the characters on the plates.